Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, incredibly complex geopolitical flashpoint, one that connects high-stakes Washington trade wars directly to the municipal solid waste sitting in your bins right now. I'm so glad you're joining me because this is one of those deep dive topics that proves literally everything that's connected. We're going to unpack how international trade policy, tariff threats, and edge computing aren't just abstract concepts discussed in capital cities, they actually dictate the physical supply chain of trash. Here is our roadmap for the breakdown. First, we'll hit the looming trade war, then map out the cross-border trash corridor, look at closing the Michigan loophole, unpack Ontario's capacity crisis, analyze the Bill 5 backlash, and finally, and this is where it gets really exciting, we'll dive into technology and the transition. Section 1, the looming trade war. Okay, so let's set the macro scene here. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been aggressively bracing his province for some intense CSMA or USMCA renegotiations. He's been out there warning that Washington is going to come at them with double barrels. Ford is telling his constituents to literally fasten their seatbelts, anticipating the current free trade agreement is going to be ripped open early. It's a highly defensive posture, right? We're seeing this hard pivot toward a Fortress North America approach. And we are already seeing the real-world, absolute friction of this leverage. Following Washington's threat of a colossal 50% tariff on Canadian imports, which, by the way, was specifically linked to Canadian wildfire smoke blowing over the border, Ontario was basically forced to blink. They had to suspend a 25% electricity export surcharge aimed at the U.S. The White House naturally framed this as a massive win, but what this really shows us is that the border is becoming totally weaponized. It is highly sensitive to environmental and trade friction, and that bleeds into everything. Section 2, the cross-border trash corridor, which brings us to the micro-level vulnerability, the physical waste footprint. The scale of this is just staggering. Ontario currently exports 3.44 million tons of municipal solid waste to the United States every single year. To put that into perspective, that tonnage accounts for roughly 14.35% of all the waste disposed of in Michigan landfills. It is a continuous, heavy-duty flow of raw materials crossing an increasingly tense boundary. So while 73% of Ontario's waste is handled domestically, a full 27% relies entirely on that open U.S. border. This exported waste travels down this massive transboundary corridor right into Michigan. That means more than a quarter of the province's entire waste strategy is hanging by a thread, utterly dependent on the political goodwill of its southern neighbors. And as we just saw, that goodwill is in short supply. Section 3, closing the Michigan loophole. Let's look at the raw economics that created this corridor in the first place. Historically, Michigan has been a super attractive destination for Ontario's waste because of a remarkably low state-levied landfill fee. We're talking just 36 cents per ton. It was just cheaper to truck it over the border. But Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is proposing a massive hike, bringing that fee all the way up to $5 a ton. The explicit goal here? To discourage foreign and out-of-state waste dumping. So that cheap loophole Ontario has relied on for over a decade, it's slamming shut. Section 4, Ontario's capacity crisis. When you cut off the safety valve of Michigan, you trigger an immediate domestic crisis back home. An official needs assessment reveals that Ontario is rapidly, and I mean rapidly, running out of local landfill capacity. Domestic sites are hitting their total approved limits way faster than anyone modeled for. The province is caught in this brutal mathematical trap. On one hand, waste generation has jumped by 17%, driven by a booming population and a massive construction sector. But simultaneously, available landfill capacity has plummeted by 18%. Those two metrics are moving in catastrophic directions. Scrambling to adapt to this bottleneck, we're seeing massive private sector proposals stepping in. A prime example is York 1. They're looking to take a tiny 0.8-hectare waste processing site in Dresden and blow it up into a sprawling 25-hectare regenerative waste facility. We're talking about processing up to 6,000 tons a day of construction, demolition, and soil waste. It's a massive pivot to try and handle this stuff locally, but it drastically alters the local landscape. Section 5. The Bill 5 backlash. To force these solutions through, the government introduced Bill 5. It was passed 71-44, fast-tracked via time allocation to literally cut debate short. What this bill does is grant the provincial cabinet unprecedented Henry VIII-style powers. They can now override municipal and environmental laws to create special economic zones. It essentially lets the government bypass standard environmental assessments just to get shovels on the ground faster to solve this capacity crisis. But ramming legislation through like that comes at a high cost. Because the bill was passed without First Nations consultation, Indigenous leaders are fiercely pushing back. Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler explicitly stated they are looking at all options, warning of direct action, protests, and blockades. It is a severe clash between the desperate need for local infrastructure and the absolute legal requirements for consultation.
Section 6, Technology and the Transition.
So how do we get out of this? Advanced technology is stepping into the gap, and this is where the engineering gets absolutely wild. We're shifting from just burying waste to mining it for resources. You've got Carbon Mapper deploying drones to track methane plumes, and Waste Management opening optical sorting facilities driven by AI. We're also seeing the conversion of construction wood into alternative low-carbon fuel, or ALCF. But rather than just shipping raw municipal solid waste to sit in Michigan, the real revolution is happening at the very edge of the supply chain. Enter the 905 Wood Digital Refinery. Think of this as the sentient bridge between chaotic demolition waste and the strict purity requirements of the global market. They're intercepting waste before it even hits a truck. And the platform stack they're using to do this is incredible. We're talking about deploying the Google Pixel 10 Pro, running Android 16 directly at the bin. They utilize the Light-RT AI stack with the Tensor G5 TPU to run a multimodal edge model, specifically Gemma 4 E2B. This thing can classify wood streams as clean, treated, or mixed in under 500 milliseconds, locally, no cloud latency. And to make it court-ready for these strict border compliance laws, they use a Titan M2 hardware root of trust to create a 2.0-second haptic lock, sealing the tamper-evident chain of custody. It is next level. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The geopolitical trade wars are tightening this waste corridor, and the clock is ticking. You can't just rely on 36-cent dumping across the border anymore. The 905 Wood workflow proves what's possible. From RFQ intake via voice agents, to on-device AI classification, to direct-to-BioHub dispatch bypassing landfills entirely. They even use AlloyDB AI and ScanRag at the gate to verify compliance against Ontario Regulation 347, automatically filing HS 3825.0 certificates of origin under the new trade rules, and minting carbon removal certificates. It is a fully decoupled, brilliantly engineered circular economy. So I leave you with this. Can regions leverage this kind of edge AI, advanced robotics, and new policy to build a true circular economy before the border closes for good? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope it completely changes how you look at the geopolitics and the tech behind the everyday items we throw away.